All right, 251, let's do this. This is half-assed, barely prepared. I hate doing it this way. It's my favorite class, talking about these two poems. This is what you need to know about Sonnet and Mr. T, okay? Sonnet is the sonnet that Terrance Hayes felt he had to write to appease certain people. Mr. T is the sonnet that he wanted to write, okay? And the collection that this is from, Hip Logic, which is a great book, the first third of it is devoted to poems entirely about race, okay? And this comes from that chunk, all right? So I'm trying to provide context here. They share a single page. So page 13 or whatever is sonnet. You turn the page 14 is Mr. T, okay? So in some ways, sonnet serves as the introduction to Mr. T, a preemptive strike, a preamble, if you will, okay? And I know when you read it, you probably looked at it and you're like, what the hell is this? I could have done this. This is stupid. And all sorts of other things. And I'm here to try to help you understand why sonnet is not any of those things, okay? Very serious poem. First, you have to consider what it is and its simplicity. All right, title, sonnet. Not trying to trick anybody. Wants you to consider what is a sonnet, okay? We've talked about sonnets already. Sonnet has 14 lines. It's an iambic pentameter. It has a rhyme scheme. Usually has a turn. Anyway, is this 14 lines? Yes. It's the same line over and over again, but it's 14 lines. Does it rhyme? Yes. It's a perfect rhyme. It's not a great rhyme. It's the same word over and over again, but potentially different meanings each time, right? So 14 lines, yes. Iambic pentameter, yes. Rhyme scheme, yes. Doesn't have a turn. That's okay. What else do we know about sonnets, right? What comes to mind when you think of sonnets? I hear a number of you in my mind going, Shakespeare, because we already talked about Shakespeare. Okay, and what can you tell me about Shakespeare? British, wrote a long time ago, wrote a lot of stuff. Some of you are saying things that I would reject, and we could talk about that in class if you want to, because I've heard it all before. But very simple stuff that anyone could tell you about Shakespeare. He is a man. He's alive 400 years ago, 400 plus years ago. It's over 400 at this point. And he was white. So when we think of sonnets, we think of old, dead, white dudes, right? That's a stereotype. See where I'm going with this? Are there any other stereotypes in this poem? And this is where you all hem and haw and say, I don't know. And then one brave person raises her hand and points it out and says, watermelon. And then we have this big conversation about watermelon and what the stereotypes are connected to that. And then I go on this whole food-related thing, tie in Tiger Woods, tie in LaDainian Tomlinson and Junior Seau, do this wonderful explanation of stereotypes related to food and race relations in this country, and there you have it. And then what are we doing with the stereotype in the poem? We are literally slicing it to cut into smaller and smaller pieces, and then turning them to smiles, which are by and large positive things, right? So this poem is in many ways just an FU to racist assholes who would say, you can't write a poem because you're not an old dead white dude. Terrance Hayes, you're a black man, you can't write a sonnet, right? So here's his FU, here's your sonnet, you racist piece of crap, okay? So then that he can write the sonnet he wants to write, Mr. T, right? Which is entirely about race relations. Is Mr. T 14 lines? Yes. Is it an iambic pentameter? No. It has some lines that are sort of there. It bounces around. It's largely iambic, but not always pentameter. Does it have a rhyme scheme? No. Does it have a turn? Yes. In many ways, the most important aspect of a sonnet, it has that. What is that turn? It asks a question 2/3 of the way through. What are we to learn from Mr. T? Who is the we? Young black men, right? It's asking this question. what are we as young black men supposed to learn from Mr. T? I ask you, what do you know about Mr. T other than what the poem says? All right, B.A. Baracus in the A-Team, his most famous role, and that's what it's largely dealing with in the poem. So that's what we'll talk about here briefly. Valued for his strength, right? Valued for his ability to beat people up, right? And large, imposing, physical man, threatening, violent, right? Not known for his intelligence, not known for speaking well, right? So the A-Team would go from place to place and help out people and whatnot. And he was the muscle, right? He was the muscle. So, but he was afraid to fly, as it says in the poem. So when they needed to go somewhere and they took him, what they would often do, they had a helicopter, they would shoot him with a tranquilizer dart and then take him on the helicopter and take him somewhere. So they drugged him, kidnapped him, took him on this vehicle from this place to this place, and then exploited him for his physicality and his strength. Are you with me? Do you get the metaphor there? This was what passed for good TV. No one stopped and thought, hey, what is this? And this is where I go on a tangent about pop culture and TV and what was highest rated and what everybody was watching and their lack of minority representation, and why things like Black Panther and Wonder Woman and all of these things are a big fucking deal. Apologies for the F-bomb there. But representation matters, right? And this really gets to the heart of it, because if we're telling a generation of young black men, hey, here's your role model, and you even start thinking about what it means, we're basically saying, F you. And you're not going to get anything from that. And then we turn around and we expect them to not be that. And we wonder about all of these systemic issues in our country dealing with race. And we say, what? Well, how did that happen? And well, it's not hard when you start actually looking at history, politics, and even pop culture, things like the A-Team and Mr. T. And you can find your answer pretty quickly. So he's asking, what are we supposed to learn from that? And that's a really big question. And that's hard to talk about and think about. But he does it in 14 lines, and it's a lovely sonnet, and it's one he wanted to write. But for you to approach it as a sonnet, connected to all of the history of the sonnet and everything that ties to that, he needed to get sonnet out there first to preemptively stop the racists who would look at Mr. T and say, that's not a sonnet. You tried, but it's not a sonnet. He said, here's your sonnet, F you with sonnet, and here's the sonnet for the people that are ready for it. Okay? Sonnet, Mr. T. We'll talk more about it hopefully sometime next week. We'll see how the FaceTime, WebEx, whatever the hell we do works out. All right. I hope that was not too fast or boring or anything else for you. I really much enjoy this 50-minute conversation in person. Let me know if you have any questions. I hope you're all well. Talk to you later.